As a massive global war breaks out, disrupting communications, supply lines, and police focus, the underworld sees an opportunity. A forgotten underboss, Dante the Ghost Moretti, launches a silent takeover while the world looks the other way. Dante Moretti stood by the window, watching the city below. He wasn't looking at the luxury cars or the bright lights. He was watching the phones. Normally, the city's phone lines hummed with chatter, people arguing about traffic, talking about dinner, or just chatting. Tonight, the hum was gone. The headlines on every TV, including the giant screens in Times Square, screamed about the massive airstrikes overseas. A state of emergency flashed in red. People were terrified. They were staying home. They were making desperate calls to family members. The cops were busy, pulled to guard power stations and bridges. Every news channel was talking about the strikes on leadership and Operation Epic Fury. Dante smiled, a slow, thin smile. "They aren't looking," he said to the large man standing behind him. This was Bruno, his enforcer. "They are looking at the big explosions 10,000 miles away. They aren't looking at who controls the docks down the street." Dante was the underboss for the powerful Lucani family, but underboss wasn't enough for Dante. Old man Lucani was getting soft, hiding in his fortress, worried about what this world war would do to his stocks. Old man Lucani saw a disaster. Dante saw an opening. "Bruno," Dante said, turning away from the window, "the police have canceled all leave. They are focused on potential attacks and controlling crowds at the gas stations. They don't have eyes for the gambling dens or the truck routes." "So what's the move, boss?" Bruno asked, his voice deep. Dante walked to a massive wooden table. A map of the city's criminal territories was spread across it. Dante didn't attack Old Man Lucani directly, he explained, his finger tracing the supply routes. "That starts a war within the family, and we can't afford that with everything on the line. We attack his wallet. While he's focused on the news, we take the docks, the trucking union, and the warehouse district. Tonight. By tomorrow morning, Lucani won't be able to move a single shipment without paying us." The city below was focused on the end of the world, but in the shadows, Dante Moretti was just getting started. The fog over the city docks was thick, but the tension in the air was thicker. Usually, the harbor was crawling with Port Authority police and private security. Tonight, however, the sirens were all blocks away. Every available officer had been moved to the city center to guard the government buildings and gas stations following the news of the strikes. "Look at them," Dante whispered, pointing at a small group of guards huddled around a portable radio. They weren't watching the shipping containers. They were listening to the latest update on the Roaring Lion operation. "They're scared," Bruno grunted. He adjusted the heavy suppressed pistol in his waistband. "Fear makes people blind, and being blind makes them lose money." The docks belonged to Old Man Lucani. Every illegal shipment of electronics, luxury cars, and unmarked crates came through Pier 42. It was the Lucani family's golden goose. If Dante controlled the pier, he controlled the family's oxygen. Dante gave a sharp whistle. Out of the shadows, 6 of his most loyal soldiers appeared. They weren't wearing masks, they were wearing high-visibility vests. They looked like regular dock workers. In a time of national emergency, nobody questions a man in a uniform doing his job. "Go," Dante ordered. The takeover was silent. While the world's eyes were on the TV screens, Dante's men moved through the shipyard. They didn't use many bullets. They used zip ties and intimidation. The guards, already rattled by the news of a potential World War III, didn't put up a fight. They were more worried about their families at home than the old man's crates. By 3 a.m., the security office was under Dante's control. He sat in the head guard's chair and looked at the security monitors. He saw his men locking the main gates. "The harbor is closed," Dante said into the radio. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rang. The caller ID showed a private, encrypted number. It was Old Man Lucani. He was calling from his bunker to check on his goods. Dante picked up the phone. He didn't say a word. He just listened to the old man's breathing on the other end. "Who is this?" Lucani barked. "Why is the pier offline?" Dante leaned back and watched the sunrise through the smog. "The world is changing, Lucani. Maybe it's time you retired before the fires reach your front door." Dante hung up. He had just declared war, and the police were too busy with the headlines to stop him. While the city streets were filled with long lines at gas stations and worried families, Old Man Lucani was underground. His private bunker was filled with TV screens. Every single one showed the same thing: fire in the Middle East, and the U.S. president giving a speech about Operation Epic Fury. Lucani slammed his fist on a marble table. "Dante thinks he's clever," he growled. "He thinks because the world is falling apart, I've forgotten to bite." Lucani's top captains stood around him. They were nervous. They had lost the docks, which meant they were losing millions of dollars every hour. In the Mafia, if you don't have money, you don't have loyalty. "Boss," one captain said quietly, "the police are setting up checkpoints everywhere because of the national emergency. We can't send a hit squad to the docks. They'll get pulled over and arrested before they even get close." Lucani's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't use a hit squad. We use the chaos." Back at the docks, Dante was busy. He wasn't just sitting around. He knew that in a crisis, the most valuable thing isn't gold, it's resources. He had his men opening the shipping containers. Inside weren't just luxury cars. There were medical supplies, generators, and thousands of gallons of fuel. "The price of gas just tripled on the news," Dante told Bruno. "People are fighting at the pumps. If we control the fuel, we control the city." Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the warehouse. Dante dived behind a crate. "Is it an airstrike?" Bruno shouted, reaching for his weapon. "No," Dante yelled over the sound of fire alarms. "It's Lucani. He's not trying to take the docks back. He's trying to destroy them so nobody can have them." Through the smoke, Dante saw a black SUV speeding away. Lucani had sent a fire starter crew. They didn't care about the police checkpoints because they looked like emergency workers. Dante looked at his burning supplies. The global war was happening thousands of miles away, but his personal war had just turned white hot. He realized to beat Lucani, he couldn't just be a businessman. He had to become a monster. "Bruno," Dante said, his face covered in soot, "find out where Lucani is hiding his backup cash. If he wants to burn my house, I'm going to bury him in his." The city was in a state of emergency. The governor had closed the schools, and the grocery stores had empty shelves. People were terrified because the news said the war would disrupt shipping for months. In the suburbs, people were fighting over the last boxes of canned food and batteries. Dante Moretti stood in his new headquarters, a massive underground parking garage beneath a closed shopping mall. "The fire at the docks took out half our electronics," Bruno said, looking at a clipboard. "But the fuel tanks, we saved those, boss. We have 10,000 gallons of diesel and 5,000 of regular gas." Dante nodded. He wasn't worried about the lost TVs or designer shoes. "Electronics are for peacetime, Bruno. Right now, people want to know their lights will stay on. They want to know their cars can get them out of the city if things get worse." Dante didn't sell the gas for triple the price. He did something much smarter. He started giving it away, but only to the right people. He sent small trucks to the local neighborhood leaders, the guys who ran the unions, and even a few off-duty police officers who couldn't find fuel for their personal cars. "Tell them it's a gift from the Moretti family," Dante instructed his men. "Tell them we look out for our own when the government is too busy with overseas wars to help." By noon, Dante had a line of people waiting outside his garage. They weren't just criminals, they were regular people who felt abandoned by the system. Dante was building an army of people who owed him a favor. In the Mafia, a favor is more powerful than a bullet. But old man Lucani wasn't done. He saw Dante gaining public support, and it made him furious. Lucani decided to hit Dante where it hurt, his reputation. "Boss," a runner shouted, sprinting into the garage. "The news! Look at the news!" Dante turned on a portable TV. A news reporter was standing in front of the burning docks from the night before. Police sources say the fire at the harbor was started by a rogue mafia group trying to steal emergency supplies. The city is now calling Dante Moretti public enemy #1. Dante's eyes turned cold. Lucani had used his connections in the city's media to frame him. Now, not only was the Mafia hunting him, but the entire National Guard would be looking for him too. They want a villain? Fine, let's give him one. The city didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a war zone. With Operation Epic Fury making headlines, the National Guard had set up bright lights and armored trucks at every major intersection. They weren't just looking for foreign threats, they were looking for Dante Moretti. "They have your face on every digital billboard from here to the airport, boss," Bruno whispered. They were sitting in the back of a beat-up laundry van, smelling of bleach and old detergent. It was the only way to move without the police cameras picking them up. Dante looked at a small tablet screen. "Lucani thinks he's won because he turned the law against me. He thinks I'll run and hide in the woods." "Aren't we?" Bruno asked, checking his watch. "The cops are raiding every warehouse we own. They even took the gas we were giving away. People are angry, but they're scared of the uniforms." Dante shook his head. "No. When the world is at war, information is more expensive than gold. Lucani didn't just call the news. He paid off the news director at Channel 8 to run that fake story about the fire. If we prove the news is lying, the people will realize the government is protecting a real monster, Lucani." Dante had a plan that was crazier than anything he'd ever done. He wasn't going to a hideout, he was going to the Channel 8 broadcast center. The building was a fortress. Because of the national emergency, it was guarded by private security and 2 police cruisers. Everyone wanted to control the main stream of information. "How do we get in?" Bruno asked. "We can't just shoot our way into a TV station during a world crisis. We'll have the whole army on us in 5 minutes. Dante pulled out a black briefcase. Inside wasn't a gun. It was a high-powered signal jammer and a USB drive. "We don't need to stay in there," Dante said. "We just need 5 minutes at the main server. While the world is watching the war updates, we are going to interrupt the broadcast. We're going to show the city the security footage of Lucani's men starting that fire." Dante looked out the tiny window of the laundry van. The TV station was dead ahead. "Tonight," Dante promised, "the public enemy is going to tell the truth, and when the people find out they've been lied to while their sons are off at war, this city is going to burn, and Lucani will be the one in the flames." The Channel 8 news center was buzzing. Every monitor in the building showed maps of the Middle East and live footage of Operation Epic Fury. The journalists were frantic, typing up reports about the latest strikes. Nobody noticed the laundry van pulling into the loading dock. "Remember," Dante whispered to Bruno, "we don't need to kill anyone. We just need to plug this in." Dante and Bruno wore blue technician jumpsuits. In a national emergency, repairmen are everywhere fixing glitches. They walked past the front desk with a fake work order. The guard, busy watching a report about the supreme leader of Iran, barely glanced at their badges. They reached the server room on the 3rd floor. The hum of the cooling fans was loud. Dante pulled out the USB drive. It contained the crystal-clear security footage from the docks. It showed old man Lucani's top enforcer pouring gasoline and lighting the match. It even showed a high-ranking police captain shaking hands with the arsonist. "If this goes live," Bruno said, his hand on his holster, "Lucani is finished. But so are we. The cops will hunt us to the ends of the earth for hacking a government-controlled station." "They're already hunting us, Bruno," Dante replied. "I'd rather be hunted for telling the truth than for a lie." Dante jammed the USB into the main console. On his tablet, a progress bar appeared. Uploading, 40%, 70%. Suddenly, the red on-air light in the hallway began to flicker. In the studio downstairs, the news anchor was in the middle of a sentence about the airstrikes. "Breaking news," the anchor said, looking confused as her teleprompter changed. We have new footage from the harbor fire." The screen cut from the war zone to the docks. The entire city saw the truth. They saw the hero police and Old Man Lucani working together to burn the city's supplies. Dante watched the monitor. "There it is," Dante whispered. But then the alarms started screaming. The signal jammer had been detected by the station's high-tech security. "We have to go, now!" Bruno yelled. As they ran for the exit, Dante saw the first police cars screaming toward the building. He had told the truth, but now he was trapped in a skyscraper with the entire city's police force coming to silence him. The city was screaming. Outside the Channel 8 building, the sound of sirens was drowned out by the roar of the crowd. People who had been waiting in gas lines for hours were now throwing rocks at police cars. They had seen the footage. They knew the shortage was a lie created by Old Man Lucani and the corrupt captains. "They're coming up the stairs," Bruno yelled, slamming the heavy steel door to the roof. He shoved a metal pipe through the handles to lock it. Clang! The sound echoed in the cold night air. Dante stood on the edge of the skyscraper. Below him, the city looked like a map of fire. With the national news still reporting on the airstrikes in Iran, the local police were losing control of their own streets. "The helicopter," Dante said, pointing toward the helipad. "The news station keeps a bird ready for breaking news coverage. That's our ride." "I don't know how to fly a chopper, boss," Bruno shouted as bullets started thudding against the other side of the door. Thump, thump, thump. The police were using rams to break through. "I do," Dante said. "I spent 2 years in the desert before I joined the Lucani family. The military taught me more than just how to shoot." They ran across the concrete roof. The wind was whipping Dante's coat. Just as they reached the Eurocopter, the roof door flew open. A SWAT team in full black gear stormed out. "Drop the weapon! Moretti, get on the ground!" a voice boomed over a megaphone. Dante didn't stop. He scrambled into the pilot's seat and started the engine. The blades began to whistle. Whir, whir, whir. "Cover me!" Dante commanded. Bruno leaned out the side door, laying down suppressive fire. He wasn't aiming to kill, he just needed to keep the SWAT team behind the ventilation ducts. The helicopter lifted off just as the police reached the landing pad. As they rose into the smoky sky, Dante looked down. He saw Old Man Lucani's private mansion on the hill. It was dark, surrounded by guards. "The world is fighting a war over oil and power," Dante said into the headset. "But tonight, Lucani is going to learn that the most dangerous war is the one in your own backyard." Dante tilted the helicopter's nose towards the mansion. He wasn't running away anymore. He was going to the source of the rot. The Lucani mansion was a fortress on top of a hill. It had marble walls, electrified fences, and 20 armed guards. While the rest of the city was in a blackout because of the national emergency, the mansion was glowing. Old Man Lucani had his own power generators. He had his own food. He didn't care if the rest of the world burned. Dante flew the news helicopter low, skimming the tops of the trees. "They're gonna see us on radar, boss!" Bruno yelled over the roar of the blades. "The radar is jammed," Dante shouted back. "The military is jamming everything because of the airstrikes overseas. The guards are looking at the sky for missiles, not a news chopper." Dante pushed the stick forward. He wasn't landing, he was dropping. 2 miles away, the city was rioting. You could see the smoke rising from the police stations. People were angry about the lies, but here, on the hill, it was quiet. The guards were relaxed, smoking cigarettes and watching the war updates on their phones. "Now!" Dante commanded. Bruno kicked open the side door. He didn't drop a bomb, he dropped a blackout bag. It was a specialized EMP device Dante had stolen from the docks earlier. Crack! A blue spark lit up the night. Suddenly, the glowing mansion went pitch black. The electric fences died. The security cameras went blind. The guards started shouting in the dark, their flashlights waving wildly. Dante touched the helicopter down on the front lawn with a heavy thud. He jumped out before the blades even stopped spinning. He had a submachine gun in his hand and a look of cold fury on his face. "Lucani!" Dante roared into the darkness. "The world is changing. Your time is over." The guards started firing blindly into the trees. Dante and Bruno moved like ghosts through the shadows of the garden. They knew the layout of the house perfectly. They had spent years protecting it. Now they were the ones breaking in. They reached the heavy oak front doors. Dante didn't knock. He planted a small breach charge. 3, 2, 1. The doors exploded inward. Dante stepped through the smoke. He wasn't just an underboss anymore. He was the new king of the underground, and he was coming for the crown. The inside of the mansion was silent and freezing. Without the heaters or the lights, the marble halls felt like a tomb. Dante moved through the dark foyer, his night vision goggles turning the world into a ghostly shade of green. "Clear left," whispered Bruno, his suppressed rifle clicking as he checked the corners. They passed the dining room. A half-eaten steak sat on a silver platter. Old man Lucani had been interrupted during his dinner by the blackout. Dante could smell the expensive cigar smoke drifting from the library at the end of the hall. Lucani wasn't running, he was waiting. Dante kicked the library doors open. Old man Lucani was sitting in a leather chair, lit only by a single candle on his desk. He held a heavy revolver in his wrinkled hand, but he didn't raise it. He just looked at Dante with tired, hateful eyes. "You destroyed everything, Dante," Lucani rasped. "The docks, the police connections, the family name. The city is in flames because of you." "The city is in flames because you lied to them while they were scared," Dante replied, stepping into the candlelight. "You used a global war to steal gas and medicine from mothers and children. That's not being a Don, that's being a vulture." Lucani laughed, a dry hacking sound. "In this world, you are either the hammer or the nail. I chose to be the hammer. Do you think the people will thank you? Tomorrow, the army will march into this city to stop the riots. They will find you and they will hang you for treason." "Maybe," Dante said, his voice as cold as ice, "but you won't be there to see it." Suddenly, the floorboards behind Dante creaked. It was a trap. Two of Lucani's elite bodyguards, who had been hiding behind the heavy velvet curtains, stepped out with shotguns leveled at Dante's head. "Drop it, ghost," Lucani sneered, finally raising his revolver. "You're a good soldier, but you never learned the most important rule. Always have a backup plan." Dante didn't move. He didn't drop his gun. Instead, he looked at his watch. "I did learn that rule, Lucani. That's why I didn't come here alone." Outside, the sound of a massive engine roared. A heavy armored truck, one of the ones Dante had gifted fuel to earlier, crashed through the library's bay windows, sending glass and stone flying everywhere. The library was filled with dust and the smell of gunpowder. The armored truck sat in the middle of the room, its headlights cutting through the smoke like twin suns. Dante's new army, the dock workers and neighborhood guys he had helped, jumped out of the back. They weren't professional killers, but they were loyal. And in a crisis, loyalty beats a paycheck every time. Lucani's bodyguards dropped their weapons. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Old man Lucani sat frozen in his chair. The candle on his desk had been blown out by the crash. For the first time in 40 years, the great Don looked small. He looked like a relic of a world that didn't exist anymore. "It's over, Lucani," Dante said, stepping over the broken glass. He didn't fire a shot. He didn't have to. The police captain who protected you, he was just arrested by the National Guard. The footage we broadcasted made him too toxic to protect. You're alone. Lucani looked at the men who had crashed through his wall. They were the little people he had ignored for decades. "You think you can run this city, Dante, with the world at war? The government will come for you next." Dante leaned down, his face inches from the old man's. "Let them come. I'm not hiding in a mansion. I'm in the streets. I'm the one who kept the lights on when you tried to turn them off. The people don't want a dictator. They want a leader." Dante turned to Bruno. "Take him to the harbor. Hand him over to the people he tried to starve. Let them decide his fate." As the sun began to rise over the scarred city, the news on the TV in the corner finally shifted. The airstrikes overseas were slowing down. The Roaring Lion operation was entering a new phase. But for this city, the war was already won. Dante stood on the balcony of the mansion, looking out at the horizon. He wasn't wearing a crown, and he didn't need one. He had the keys to the docks, the fuel, and the hearts of the people who felt forgotten. The world was in chaos, but Dante Moretti was calm. He picked up his phone and made one call. "This is Dante. The old guard is gone. Tell the families to get in line. There's a new boss in town, and things are going to be different from now on." The shadow war was over. The reign of the ghost had begun.
If you like this story, please leave a like and drop a comment. Also, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next interesting story. We wish everybody watching a good health and light in our path.